I'm so excited to talk about speaking out. As Reverend Patty already described, our theme this month is BLISSITUDE or BLISSIPLINE, and the idea that we can use our spiritual practices with discipline in order to create, experience, and maintain bliss in our lives is really powerful thought for me. And I love it because often, as Dr. Petra talked about in the first week of this month, we give discipline a bad rap. We think of discipline as something difficult or hard or as an enforcement or a correction to a problem, instead of really recognizing that discipline gives us the opportunity to move into bliss. So take a deep breath. Now I'm going to call out 5 words, and I'm going to invite you to just allow whatever comes to your mind to come to your mind, right? You're in a safe place, there's no big deal, but just what comes to your mind when I say these 5 words? Divorce, discrimination, diagnosis, disaster, death. Okay, take another deep breath. Because what I know is that for many of you, you hear those words and you think those words and it doesn't feel so good. For most of us, those are the kinds of things that we really don't want to spend a lot of time on, and we don't want to think about it. And if you have been in metaphysical, spiritual practices for any amount of time, you might even say to yourself, I'm not going to think about that because I don't want to attract it. And what I think about shows up in my life, and I don't want to be divorced, so I'm not going to think about divorce. And instead, what we like to think about are things like peace and love and joy and harmony and wholeness and beauty and abundance, and we want to talk about those. We want to attract those into our lives more and more. But the reality is we cannot get to peace and joy and harmony and wholeness and beauty. We can't get there just by magic. I mean, that's one of the reasons that the song is so perfect, because our spiritual practices only work if we work them. And we can't be surprised, or we can't be confused, or we can't be under the delusion that money can buy us peace, joy, happiness, wholeness, or that sex can deliver peace and happiness and wholeness into the fullness of our life, or that drugs will make anything that's not working go away and buy us the spiritual peace that we want to have. So you cannot buy these things. You can use your spiritual practice to move there. And there's a lyric in the song that Lainey sang that, if you're familiar with the song, you probably picked up on it. But if you're not familiar with the song, the lyric goes, give up your needs, give up your poisoned seeds. Find yourself elected to a different kind of creed. Get that? Give up your needs, your poisoned seeds. Find yourself elected to a different kind of creed. And the creed that I have elected for my life, and most of you sitting in this room have elected, is that creed known as the faith, the philosophy, and the way of life that we call science of mind. It is a creed that then allows us to replace the poison seeds with a creed that is repeated in that song over and over again. I believe that love alone will do these things for you. Can you repeat that after me? I believe that love alone will do these things for you. Take that in. Wow. Believing that love alone will create these qualities of God, then I get to practice those things that will allow those qualities to then express in my life. A couple of weeks ago, when Dr. Petra was introducing this theme for the month, she shared what is spiritual practice. And she said that spiritual practice is the regular or full-time performance of actions and activities undertaken for the purpose of inducing spiritual experiences and cultivating spiritual development. That's why we do spiritual practices. I smile and pause because I remember when I was growing up, and I grew up in the church. My family was very involved in the church. And one of the things that I learned, often not because anyone specifically said it, but what I picked up as the lesson was that you do spiritual practices because you're trying to earn something good. You're doing spiritual practices because there's some entity outside of you that is watching you and just waiting for you to mess up. And so you better do your spiritual practices, or you better follow the 10 Commandments, because if you don't, bad things will happen. But in Science of Mind, we don't teach that. What we teach, because we believe that there is one power, it is a power for good, and in its creating each one of us, it has already included in our spiritual DNA these wonderful attributes and qualities, and we simply have to align ourselves with them, and we have a choice about that. And so we teach that spiritual practices actually are our own individual and collective when we do spiritual practice together. Spiritual practices are the actions and activities designed to induce spiritual experiences, to fill up our lives and our beingness in a way that cultivates our own spiritual development. And that we're always taking our spiritual development to the next level. We're always growing. That does not stop. And so there's, no punishment except for anything that I experience as a consequence of my own actions or the way that I'm interacting with whatever is going on in the world around me. So that's what spiritual practice is. Now, when we're not doing our spiritual practice in full commitment to revealing the truth of each one of us, then sometimes what happens to some people is that they fall into what we call spiritual bypass. Now, if that's what spiritual practice is, what is spiritual bypass? So the way I describe spiritual bypass is this. Spiritual bypass is using spiritual phrases and spiritual activities without doing the inner work that is required to actually be in alignment with spiritual law or spiritual truth. I'm going to say that again. Not because you need to hear it, but because I'm sure there are people you know who you want to tell them. So what is spiritual bypass? Spiritual bypass is using spiritual phrases or spiritual activities without doing the inner work that is required in order to actually be in alignment with spiritual law and or proving the spiritual principles. That's spiritual bypass. So what does that look like and what does that sound like? Well, often it looks very similar to true spiritual practice. but, the inner work is not lining up with the words that are being said or the actions that are being taken. So sometimes it shows up like maybe, if I were to go to my Sangha group, my prayer and meditation group, and I showed up and I said, oh, will y'all pray for me? That's good. But I'm not doing anything myself, right? Or I'm not actually doing anything to support the intention that I have. Or it might look like or sound like me saying, example. So, I'm on Facebook and people are commenting and they're going back and forth. And I just say, oh, well, you all are messing around in that messy stuff and I'll just pray for you. Or I'll just pray for the situation, without acknowledging really what's happening on the human scale in a way that allows it to move and heal and grow through it. Because we have to do that in order for change to actually happen. Or saying, oh, I believe in science of mind, and what I've learned is that everything that happens, it's all good. Well, if someone comes to me as a licensed practitioner and they say, Tracy, 2 days ago I came from the doctor's office. I was at the doctor's office and she said to me, I got your test results back and I'm sorry to tell you, you have stage 3 cancer and you have less than a 40% chance to live more than 6 months. I am not going to say, oh, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Cancer is just something humans made up. Yeah, it's not really real. It's all good. I'm not going to say that because the reality is that the test, the physical expression, there is something that is showing up in this moment. What I will say I will drop into the spiritual truth and move myself and this person into alignment, because I might say, I don't deny that cancer exists. I deny that cancer has the power to define who you are and how you experience every breath you take in this human experience. I may say that I agree that the power and the presence of the divine has the ability to shift and move, and what I know is every cell in your body is actually right now coming back into wholeness and working together in such a way that every cell is communicating with every other cell in order to have the best and highest outcome in your health and your wholeness and your entire life experience. And then I'm going to pray around that, and I'm going to believe that, and I'm going to read about that, and I'm going to stand in that place. But I will never say, cancer's not real. Don't worry about it. It's all good. I will never say discrimination doesn't happen, and that if you're telling me your story about what happened to you because you felt excluded based on your race, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your religious group, your physical ability or disability, I'm not going to deny you're having that experience. And just say, I know that we're all one, God is good, and life is great. I'm not going to do that. That's spiritual bypass. I'm going to acknowledge, here is what is happening, and here is your experience, and it's just one experience. Let us look beneath that experience, behind that experience, and bring forth the power of God, and I am right here with you to do that. Let's move through this together. I'm never going to turn my back on it, because if I do that, whether it's for my own life or whether it's because I'm being in service to you, then I am actually pretending that the human experience is not happening. But we are here in these bodies to have a human experience. So as I was thinking about this, many of you know me well enough that, I have this little soundtrack that goes on in the back of my head, and I didn't think it was really the right song to have as the special song before the talk, but I couldn't get it out of my head. So anybody in the room familiar with James Brown, the Godfather of Soul? Oh, one or two of you. And so there's a song that James Brown sang that I just love because it is so about, or it can be so related to, spiritual bypass. So, I'm saying all the right things. I'm very, very spiritual. Oh, look at me. I can quote Ernest Holmes, and I can tell you all the smart things to say, and they sound so good. But James Brown said, that's like a dull knife. It just ain't cutting. It's not changing anything. A dull knife cannot cut through that meat and break it into little pieces that then can be worked with or eaten, because it's dull. And spiritual bypass is dull. It sounds good, but it is not cutting through the crap of life in any way that allows you to break those pieces apart and then reconfigure them into wholeness. Next line in the James Brown song actually is the title of the song. So if you want to go to YouTube this week and look it up and listen to it and jam a little bit. You're just talking loud and saying nothing. Right? You're just talking loud and saying nothing. And over, I hear that, and it's like, oh, that is what spiritual bypass is like. I'm saying all the right things. They're beautiful. They're true. But I'm not saying anything that I am applying in my life. And in that case, they're still true because it's a universal truth. But it is not going to be true in my life because I am not doing the things that represent and that integrate the words I am saying into the way that I interact with Linda, or into the way that I show up when BB asks me a question, or into the way that I sit with a client in a practitioner session, or more important than anything else, if I'm not integrating it into what I say when I look myself in the mirror, or when I do my own spiritual practice in the morning or at the end of the day. And isn't that where it's absolutely most important? That the words I use and the commitment I make is followed, that these things are followed by what I actually do. There's a quote that goes like this: life itself flows from both clear and muddy waters. Life itself flows from springs both clear and muddy. Life itself is a perfect expression of humanity, and our lessons come both from the clean, clear water that we find ourselves in and the muddy water that we slug through. It's not life with only one or the other. It's not a full and complete life with only one or the other. And so Ernest Holmes says this a little differently, but it's really the same point. There is nothing to heal. You can finish it, right? There's nothing to heal, only truth to reveal. Only truth to reveal. So when your life is experiencing, when your life experience includes things like that we talked about at the beginning, divorce, discrimination, diagnosis, disasters of any kind, when that's happening, it's not that God has forsaken you or me or our society or our planet. It's an opportunity for us to really reveal the truth, to look at what's happening. Ernest Holmes also has written, the real challenge for us as practitioners of science of mind, not licensed practitioners, but any of us who practice science of mind, is to be able to look a fact, like what's happening, to look a fact in the face and call it a lie, because we know it is not the limitation that must be true every moment from this point on. It is simply what I am recognizing right here and right now, what I am experiencing right here and right now, and I know the truth of a spiritual oneness, of spiritual wholeness. I know the truth of my very being and expression, and guess what? That is my work to reveal it first through spiritual principle and spiritual practice in my own life. And then as I show up, then people around me notice it and they realize, wow, if that's possible for Tracy, it's possible for me. I want some of that. So the scene in Sleepless in Seattle, the famous restaurant scene, right, where the woman across the restaurant looks over and says, well, wait a minute, we did, side note, we did talk about, we started with a song that was about money, sex, and drugs. So I can say this. So the woman in the restaurant, if you haven't seen the film or you don't remember it, is looking across, and Meg Ryan, the actress in her character, she is sitting in the restaurant and she is faking an orgasm just like with sounds and words and saying, proving the point that, this can be fake. This is like, really? And the woman over here is hearing it and looking over, and everybody's looking, and the woman goes, I don't know what she ordered or what she's having, but I want some of that. Well, don't you want people to look at how you live your life and the faith that you have and be so impressed and so caught up in watching you, seeing you, experiencing you, that they go, I don't know, but whatever Bert's got, I want some of that, right? Isn't that what we want? Not for the prestige of it, but really it's a reminder that, oh, when I show up, I actually influence the world and others. I am a model of God expressing. I can do that. I don't have to be caught in this victim status, feeling overburdened by all the things that are happening to me in my life. I can see them, I can accept them as this is what's happening, and right now, I can begin to change that. So, the lyric in the song, I believe in the power of creation. I believe in the good vibration. I believe in love alone. I believe in the power of creation. I believe in the good vibration. I believe in love alone. This is only proven or demonstrated by our spiritual practices. And so this week we are all about practicing our principles through spiritual practice. And this week, I'm going to invite you to really be thinking about how you use spiritual mind treatment to speak out your truth, to speak out the truth of God as God is expressing in, as, and through you. And so what you speak out about will be really different than what I might speak out about, because I can only speak out about what is going on in my life or what it is that I want to experience or I want to co-create in my experience. So it does start with noticing what is happening in your life that you would like to shift or that you would like to expand. Because, maybe it's a secret to some of you, but you can actually use spiritual mind treatment to expand the good. You don't only use spiritual mind treatment when something is happening that you don't like. And so it starts, the spiritual mind treatment practice begins with us really assessing what's the condition or the circumstance in my life that I want to shift. And that could be to reduce, remove, or it could be to pump it up. Pump it up. I want even more of that, right? My health is improving, and I want to continue that. So my spiritual mind treatment would be all about visioning and describing what the next level of improvement looks like. Because there's always a next level of improvement, whether you are down here. Les Brown always got famous for a quote of, it doesn't matter if I'm down here, as long as I can look up, there's some place for me to go, right? And so if I'm here, I can look up. But if I'm here, I can still look up even further. So we start by naming, assessing, getting clear about the condition and the purpose of our speaking our word, what I want more of, what I want to experience. And then there are 5 steps in our prayer practice, which we call spiritual mind treatment. And I am not going to do this, I'll say it in advance, but I'm standing here so tempted to say, you just finished foundations, you just finished foundations, give me 5 people who've just finished foundations and come up here and tell me the 5 steps of treatment. But I'm not gonna do that today. I'm gonna give you 6 months to forget it, and then I'm gonna call you. So the first step of treatment, the first formal step of spiritual mind treatment, our affirmative prayer process, is recognizing that there is only one power. There is only one life. It is the source of all of life. And describing those qualities and attributes of the one that are related to whatever purpose I am seeking to express. The second step of treatment is unification, because I have to remember and verbalize, wow, wait, this power that created me has as its nature these qualities. And it created me. So my spiritual DNA has those qualities already within me. There is nothing that can separate me from that. And the unification step allows us to just speak up and speak out about the truth of that I am one with this power. This power is expressing in, as, and through me. The third step of our prayer, our treatment, is realization, describing what it looks like when the answer to my prayer is realized in my life. What it looks like, what it would sound like, what I would be saying or what others would be saying, how I would feel, how I feel now that this prayer has been answered and is showing up in my life. And so we realize that the answer is already complete in the mind of God, and so we describe it as already done. That's what that third step is all about. And then the fourth step of treatment is thanksgiving or gratitude, expressing in our own words, our own way, the gratitude we have for knowing that there is this power for good in the universe and we can use it. Really being grateful not for things being done, but for the spiritual truth within which all of this is being done. And then releasing it. And depending on your background, the release, if you grew up or if you have a deep familiarity with the Bible, the scripture, it is not I, but the Father that doeth this work, is all about releasing, knowing that this is happening And it is something bigger than me that is actually putting together all of the pieces, all of the players, sequencing things in such a way that this demonstrates or manifests in my life. And then we release it and we get out of the way. So if this concept of spiritual mind treatment is new to you, I want to encourage you after our service today, if you want to hear it modeled and hear what a powerful spiritual mind treatment sounds like and feels like, then I encourage you to just take an extra 10 or 15 minutes and go into our ministry of prayer room and have a licensed practitioner model prayer for you for something you want to experience in your life. And if you are familiar with spiritual mind treatment, then your mission this week, if you decide to accept it and not let the cassette tape burn up, then is to really intentionally practice spiritual mind treatment, to truly speak your word this week for what you would like to see your life be and become, to speak up and to speak out the truth of the divine in your life. I will be doing that, and I invite you to do that with me. Let us go into prayer. Right here and right now. I know there is only one power, one presence. There is an infinite intelligence and a boundless love that is the source of all of life. It can be called by many names. In fact, it is called by many names by different faith paths. But what I know is that there is one very simple truth. All paths lead to the same perfection, the same perfect presence that I call Spirit or God. God is the source of each one of our lives individually, the source of all lives, not only human lives, but all of creation. Everything that is alive has been created by this same source that has no limits, that has only boundless love for life and life expanding. So I speak this word knowing that the constant expansion of love and life, moving constantly to best and highest good for all of life is what I call forth now. I honor it. I accept it. And we commit to look for it in every relationship, every conversation, every activity in the coming week, and to affirm it through our individual and collective prayer work. I'm so grateful for being willing to have the discipline that leads to bliss, for being willing to experience and model BLISSIPLINE in such a way that it shows up in my life and impacts in a positive way the lives of others. I'm so grateful for this and so much more. So from that place of gratitude, I release this word spoken now into the flow of divine activity, knowing it is already complete in the mind of God. And God simply reconfigures every cell, every atom, every system, every activity, every thought, every relationship, every circumstance that needs to be reconfigured for this prayer to manifest and be celebrated in all of our lives. Take a breath. Allow it to completely fill your presence, your mind, your body, and your soul. And repeat after me. Amen. Ashe. And so it is.